With the nation's attention fully focused on Syria and Iraq lately, the continuing mass spying grid here at home has gotten a pass. And despite the mass outrage over the U.S.'s surveillance techniques, next to nothing has been done legislatively to rein in the National Security Agency's powers. However, there is currently a bill known as the USA Freedom Act that remains unpassed in Congress that some say would be the first step in restoring Fourth Amendment protections. But a small yet vocal group of former NSA employees and civil liberty organizations signed a letter last week condemning the current bill, writing, quote, "The USA Freedom Act has significant potential to degrade rather than improve the surveillance status quo. It will create additional loopholes and provide a statutory framework for some of the most problematic surveillance policies, all the while reauthorizing the Patriot Act." So to discuss the USA Freedom Act as well as other surveillance issues, I'm joined now by one of the signers of that letter and former NSA Technical Director, Bill Binney. Amazing to have you on again, Bill.
Thank you.
So first, talk about why you think the current version of the USA Freedom Act is problematic.
Well, one of the primary problems I saw in it is that it was allowing what they call a two-hop or a two-degree principle that analysts could use. And for example, if I subscribe to, I buy Microsoft Office, I get updates from Microsoft every day, and so does everybody else who has Microsoft Office. So that means that I'm 2 degrees from everyone that has Microsoft Office. So that's hundreds of millions of people.
Right.
Okay. So, and you do that with every company in the world that you've ever contacted. So virtually you're 2 degrees from most everybody in the world.
That's a very good point. Why do you think civil liberty organizations like ACLU and EFF, the Electronic Frontier Foundation, signed on to the bill?
I think they did it because they felt it was the best thing they could get at the time. And to me, that's still not good enough. I mean, they're still not facing the real problem of this surveillance state that we have. That's why the Director Clapper and NSA were so advocates for this bill, because they could see that it would legitimize what they are already doing.
And of course, I have to bring up this tired argument that we're hearing from NSA officials about how the revelations that Snowden has brought to light actually are helping ISIS shift their communication strategies. What's your response to that?
Shifting it to what? I mean, what options do they have? I mean, if they want to communicate, they have to use the telephone or the internet or any of the, I mean, satellite phones or things of that nature, all those things that have existed all along, all of which are targeted by NSA. So what change could they possibly make? It's like if you know that Verizon is turning over all of your phone records to the NSA for graphing and mapping of your entire community, what can you do about it?
Yeah. I mean, that's a very good point. Let's move on to another story that The Intercept just published, which is that clearly many countries, of course, it's not just the U.S., pretty much every major power, most notably China, is committing economic espionage. How much of the NSA's resources are dedicated to this?
Well, I've been out of there for quite some time, almost 13 years, so I don't really know, but it's probably, I wouldn't think that it's any more than somewhere in the range of 5 to 10%, I would think, of the people who are looking at industrial or kind of crop production around the world, things of that nature. I don't think they'd have much more effort on it than that.
It is pretty incredible. Even that percentage, I think, is still a lot. But let's talk about multinational corporations here, because of course Julian Assange just came out with this book talking about how Google is basically a privatized NSA. Then you have this new report about Yahoo being threatened $250,000 a day if they didn't comply with the NSA's requests. That's amazing. I mean, that is an insane number here. How much leverage do these tech companies have if they're getting threatened with that much of a fine?
Well, I think the leverage there is pretty limited. I mean, after all, they're under the thumb of the government. If the government wants to put pressure on them, they certainly can. For example, like they did with Yahoo on the fine, that threatening of fines and things of that way. But they could also threaten them criminally for not cooperating with the law enforcement laws that are on the books. I mean, they have to provide access to law enforcement for investigating activities, so they could even threaten them with that. So, or they could manufacture evidence like they did against us to try to incarcerate us. So, I mean, the leverage government had is really much more than industry could ever oppose. So I can't blame them for cooperating, but I do blame the government for keeping all of this so secret and not giving anybody any due process in this procedure that they're going through. I mean, there's no due process for anybody that's a customer of Google or Verizon or AT&T or any of them.
Right. It is just really unfortunate that unless you want to go the Lathabit route, which is just basically dissolve your company and say, you know, I don't want to cooperate with the NSA, it seems like there's a lot of pressure to extract this information. Last time you were on the show, you were talking about, we talked about 9/11, we were talking about Thin Thread. You signed a 9/11 truth petition recently. You signed on for a new investigation of the attacks. Is that because you worked on this program and you kind of saw that we had the capabilities before 9/11, as you told me earlier, or was there something more?
Well, I talked to some physicists and some other engineers and people of that technical ilk who were looking at 9/11. Some of the things that they had discovered, factual evidence that they had available, like they had residue of what they claimed they had residue of thermite, which would in many ways say that there was something more going on other than just the airplanes hitting the towers. But also they had the photographs, and if you looked at Tower 7, the way it fell just like demolitions experts say was demolished. I mean, if you have seen other buildings collapse, like in the Middle East when the Israelis were bombing in Gaza, you could see that a building that got hit would collapse and then fall to one side or the other and not go straight down. So the point the demolition experts were saying was that the building falling on its footprint basically is evidence of demolition. That is, the weakness would have to be occurring in the entire base of the structure to fall straight down.
So you're saying that there are questions beyond even the massive intelligence failure that took place.
It's just that these things and these observable facts were ignored. They were not included, and that's sloppy science. I mean, if you're going to do something, you do it right. If you can't explain it, that's okay. You can say that, I can't explain this, but you have to at least recognize there was something observable or some fact that was there that you should at least recognize as existing.
Well, you know, I've raised questions about 9/11 in the past, and of course I've been ridiculed, as many people are in the mainstream, ostracized for questioning this event. Bill, of course, I respect you highly. You worked on the intelligence program that preempted all of this horrendous policy that we're seeing. How many people do you think in government agree that we weren't really told the full story about that intelligence failure, that just can't come out?
Well, I'm not too sure. There's probably just a very few hundreds of people who are aware of some of the material that wasn't produced for the congressional investigations or any of the other, like the 9/11 investigation, information that NSA had but didn't produce for them so that they could include it in their reports. So that was also part of the question. That's another reason that it should be revisited, and we should have the whole truth come out.
What would true surveillance reform look like to you, Bill? We have about 45 seconds left.
I mainly would focus on two key approaches. One is a focused attack on intelligence targets and groups of people who are doing nasty things, you know, or illegal things internationally, or criminal, or governments and things like that. Those are groups of people, not individuals. So you have to have a focused attack on the groups that are potentially adversaries. And the other point is to have a mechanism for verifying what the intelligence agencies are telling the government and everybody else. I mean, right now there's no way that anybody can do that. They have to have a technical mechanism to get into what they're doing in their databases to verify what they say they have.
And not just bomb people based on flawed metadata and algorithms, you know, with these drones. Thank you so much. Bill Binney, former NSA technical director. Always amazing to have your insight. Thanks so much.